The system's audio chimed as I was calling my beloved daughter, Lily. She said today the teacher taught the kids how to bake, and she secretly brought one back to let her dad taste it. On the other end, her mom pretended to scold. "Why didn't you let Mom eat first?" The child replied, "Mom can eat too, but Dad must eat first." Lily's sweet voice made me laugh. Just as a smile bloomed on my lips, the familiar system alert suddenly rang in my ear. "Warning. Target lost control. Apologies, Master. The conquest target has regained her memories. She is currently bringing your daughter to find you. This is my fault. If you wish, I can arrange a free resolution for you to transfer to another world and start over." 5 years ago, when I discovered Isabella's unattainable love, even our daughter wanted that person to be her father. I truly considered ending everything, but now, looking at my phone screen with our happy family photo as the wallpaper, I shook my head and said, "No need. My life is good now. The love I once craved has become part of my daily life. I won't give it up. I am a conqueror." 12 years ago, I was assigned to this world to conquer the secondary character, Isabella. If she gave up the male lead and loved me, I could return to my old world and live again. Unfortunately, I had an accident. My body fell into a vegetative state, and I had no choice but to fulfill the mission. The system said Isabella was an S-class character, extremely difficult to sway. To move her, I transformed into a warm-hearted guy. I even enrolled in cooking school to learn from basic knife skills to plating, from Western to Asian cuisine. For 3 months, I never repeated a dish, cooking for her every day. After she had a traffic accident and broke her leg, I cared for her day and night. Finally, a year later, she accepted my marriage proposal, saying I was her savior. In the 2nd year of marriage, she gave birth to our first child. I named her Hannah. In the 3rd year, when our daughter turned 1, Isabella held my hand and said she hoped we'd grow old together. However, the mission remained incomplete. I thought the system was faulty, but I didn't worry, believing a lifetime of happiness here would suffice. Until one night, in a mundane moment, I found Isabella hadn't logged out of WeChat on the computer. Messages popped up. "Ian, I'm back in the country. 1,000 sales have passed. Finally, I know what I truly want. Can we coexist peacefully this time?" The message was from Daniel, the male lead. This world's fate was also Isabella's unrequited love. 5 years ago, he left her to study abroad. She cried, wanting to rush to the airport, but had a car accident, breaking her leg. I stayed by her side through a year of recovery. I thought they'd cut ties, but everything continued secretly. This message was sent in their close friends group, where they once called me brother-in-law warmly. But here they were a completely different version. They said, "It's not easy, Yen." In the end, 2 lovers in pain overcame all hardships. Yes, love finally prevails. Everything's still in time. Their views disgusted me. No wonder Isabella always glanced at me secretly when messaging them. It turned out these things were always happening in the group. I opened the chat and saw all members were people I'd met, except for Daniel, whose profile picture was a neat, refined him reading scriptures elegantly. Isabella's profile was the same scripture. I'd asked her why she used it. She said it was to bless me and our daughter. Rage erupted in me like a blazing fire. These 2 truly made me feel sick. Thanks to Daniel's return, the group chatted intensely for a long time. After half an hour, Isabella hesitantly messaged, "Ethan treats me and my family very well. I can't betray him." A close friend asked, "Do you love him?" She replied firmly, "Of course not." Looking at their conversation, my head felt like it would explode. When Hannah was 4, my mother-in-law fell ill. Isabella cried daily to cure her. I spent all my savings and incurred massive debt, but it was like throwing salt into the sea. So I worked recklessly, calling for investments. I slept only 3 hours a day, flying 880,000 kilometers weekly to make ends meet. After landing, I'd entertain clients, drinking until I vomited blood, nearly dying at the table in the hospital. Isabella cried, saying I was the closest person in her life, but not the one she loved. Love and kinship were different. Love was infatuation, kinship was habit. Since there was no infatuation, the system never reported my mission complete. The truth was finally sealed. I opened their private messages and scrolled up. The more I read, the more I felt like a fool. Isabella cherished every chat with Daniel. They'd known each other for 15 years and never deleted a message. 5 years ago when we married, she messaged him, "I'm marrying someone else. Don't you want to come back?" Daniel replied, "I have ideals I can't abandon." 5 years ago when Hannah was born, Isabella begged him to return, saying, "This life isn't what I wanted. I'm trapped by family. I hope you save me from this prison." Then they chatted more. In our 5-year marriage, Isabella took our daughter to Australia annually to meet him, using vacations as an unspoken agreement. They followed each other on Instagram, looking like a loving family. My mother-in-law even wore a jade bracelet from Daniel, smiling brightly. Our close friends, who once supported me and Isabella, said behind my back that I was a spare who didn't deserve her. I sneered and asked the system, "Did I fail my mission? Can I end this and go to another world for a new task?" The system hesitated. "Master, your points aren't enough to transfer. However, since I didn't mention it earlier, I feel guilty. Few days ago I reviewed the plan. When the female secondary character marries, Daniel's story here ends. A new target to conquer will appear. If you stay and succeed, your mission will be considered complete. But this time the target is SSS class, much harder." I asked, "Does she have a first love or ex?" The system replied, "No, she's an independent female lead with no men in her heart." I said, "No men is good. I'm tired of L's as empty as moonlight or a wound. I'd rather melt an iceberg than endure this again." I asked the system to give me a new identity to start over. Before leaving, I used my last points to alter everyone's memories here, truly making Daniel Isabella's husband. The system hesitated. Should the child's memory change? I answered, yes, simple reason. Right after, Isabella messaged Hannah, who texted her mom, "I heard Daniel is back. Can he be my dad? He's so capable, unlike Dad, who only has a bachelor's degree. The neighbor's dad has a master's." Even thousands of miles apart, they both thought of the same man. Rage filled the night, bursting into irrationality. I took out the family photo from my wallet, lit it on fire, threw the lighter back, burning their house and passports. Then I accepted the system's mission to conquer the new female lead, Victoria, an independent, strong woman. Victoria was truly hard to conquer, but luckily she had a heart system that manifested her affection visibly. The first time she was ambushed in the forest, I saved her. She said, "What are you doing? I won't repay you with my body. Just name your price." There was no signal in the forest, so the next day, unable to transfer money, her affection rose 20% against her will. Then, to repay me, she took all the food from my fridge and made a feast, forcing me to eat leftovers for a week. Later, when I blocked a bullet for her, her affection rose 30%. She immediately bought me 30 luxury cars, though I had no license or parking space. When her affection hit 80%, she said, "Ethan, I know you have other goals, but I don't care. I want to marry you. I'll help you get everything you desire." When affection reached 100%, she said, "I want to be with the one I truly love." Everything became easy. I asked Victoria, "Why do you like me?" She blushed and replied, "Because I can't restrain myself." Then I realized love isn't about reluctance but uncontrollable feelings. Back to reality on the phone, she angrily asked, "Will you come home for dinner tonight?" In recent years, I've opened my own studio. My work is busier, and my meals are irregular. Victoria worries about my health, always supervising and reminding me to come home early. Only her home-cooked meals make me hungry. I smiled and replied, "I'll come home. I want your crayfish." She said, "Okay, but come early." Her voice was coy, making me cheerful. After a while, she finally hung up. When I turned around, Isabella and Hannah were standing at my studio door. Her gaze was gloomy. 5 years had passed. The little girl had grown into a young lady, taller, beautiful, and increasingly resembling Isabella, even in expression. The 11-year-old stood at my door, unhappy, asking, "Dad, who are you talking to on the phone just now?" Isabella also silently stared at me, clearly curious. I locked my phone screen, frowned, and said, "This is none of your business, and don't mistake me for your dad. I'm not your father." Hannah seemed shocked I'd reject her. She stepped forward, grabbed my arm, and said, "I'm not mistaken. You're my dad. I miss you. Why won't you acknowledge me?" Tears welled in her eyes. She clung to me, acting clingy, but I remained indifferent, even annoyed by her persistence. Hannah couldn't bear it and wanted to check immediately. She took my phone and found the screen lock password wasn't her birthday. She looked back at the photo on my desk, but it wasn't her either. In truth, since I decided to start over, I erased all traces related to her and Isabella, even her DNA. I had the system alter layer by layer. There's no evidence I'm her father. Everyone, even the world, only remembers her father as Daniel. I'm just a stranger with no connection. Hannah collapsed and cried. I looked at Isabella and said, "Ma'am, you're the child's parent, right? Teaching her randomly to claim fathers isn't good. If this gets out, people might think her mother is overly hospitable." Hearing this, Isabella's eyes reddened and she choked. "Why did you abandon us? Why does everyone say my husband, my daughter's father, is Daniel?" Just then, my phone rang with the ringtone of the song our family sang at the kindergarten festival this year. Three Treasures Family. Initially, I didn't want to set it as my ringtone, but Lily mischievously threatened to leave with our dog, Buddy, if I didn't. I wasn't worried about her, as the female lead's daughter would surely be protected in secret, but Buddy was too old. I feared he'd struggle on the streets with his frail legs. Hearing the ringtone, Hannah, who was sitting on the ground, stopped crying. Isabella was also flustered and asked, "This is Three Treasures Family. Ethan, are you missing us? Why else would you use this song?" I widened my eyes, shook my head and pushed her away, saying, "Sorry, my wife and daughter can't sing that well. People would laugh." Then I answered the phone. "Sweetheart, what's up?" My 5-year-old daughter on the line sounded guilty, as if she'd done something wrong. She tremulously asked, "Dad, did you find out I broke Mom's lipstick to draw with? I couldn't find a red crayon." I sighed. "You're the one who broke Mom's lipstick. No wonder Dad had to buy her a whole new set. It feels so wrong." I want to yell. "Pass the phone to Mom." Today I'd play the strict father, but before Victoria could answer, Isabella suddenly went mad, snatched my phone and threw it to the ground, shouting, "What daughter? What wife? Ethan, your wife and daughter are here." Time froze for half a minute. My angry expression faded, replaced by coldness. Back then, I'd thrown Isabella's phone when I found she labeled me as Ethan. At that moment, she and Hannah had just returned from Australia, and Hannah had a foreign virus, feverish at 40 degrees Celsius, deliriously calling his name in her sleep. A chilling cold spread from my head, freezing my blood. I called Isabella, but she didn't have her phone. I approached and saw her screen displayed Ethan. That note seemed harmless, but 3 months ago she called me husband. Now I was just Ethan. Furious, I tried her birthday, our wedding anniversary, Hannah's birthday, her mother's birthday, even mine. None worked. Just then, Isabella entered, saw me going through her phone, and asked, "What are you doing? Give me my phone." I gritted my teeth. "Why did you change my name?" She hastily grabbed her phone back. I immediately threw it down and questioned, "Is this why you take your daughter to Australia every year?" At that time, I thought the system had a glitch, but I bet my life on this family. In 6 years of marriage, Isabella took Hannah to Australia annually, claiming it was for mother-daughter time, telling me to go negotiate in France, attend exhibitions, or even support projects in Africa, anywhere but Australia. I stared at Isabella angrily. She gently raised her head and said, "Ethan, you threw my phone again and irrationally doubted me. Do you want to hit me too?" I looked terrible. When my thoughts returned to reality, I looked at Isabella, angry, disheveled, and said, "You really look terrible." After years of enduring, her memory wasn't sharp, her spirit weak, her face pale, and her body thin. Perhaps to see me again, she still wore the dress I bought her years ago. Once it fit her curves, now it hung loosely, looking dull. Seeing her like someone severely ill when I said she looked bad, her pupils contracted. She couldn't believe it and asked, "Ethan, what are you saying?" I just smiled lightly, not answering, because she used to like cryptic remarks and now she should understand not every question gets an answer. She lunged to cling to me, but I immediately slapped her face, knocking her down like a hunting dog. I roared, "Who are you to take your daughter around claiming fathers? Are you trying to cause a scene?" She indignantly shouted, "Ethan, have you lost your memory too? You never hit or scolded me before." I felt helpless, called security to restrain them. "Despite their struggles," Isabella said, "we're truly a family. I'm your wife, and Hannah is your daughter." Security Captain Jack, Victoria's cousin, slapped her again, saying, "Crazy woman, go to the hospital if you're ill." When I got home, Victoria was wearing a short pleated dress and a fitted crop top, cooking lobster in the kitchen. Her dress swayed with each movement. Hearing me return, she peeked out, winked, and said, "Husband, I'm home. I made lots of lobster today. Eat as much as you want." Lily timidly helped me with my bag, worried I'd tell Victoria about the lipstick. The aroma of lobster hit my nose. I entered the kitchen and softly said, "You knew about the lipstick, didn't you? Teasing me on purpose." Victoria blushed, nodded, and without hesitation, I leaned down and kissed her lightly on the lips. After all, the money was spent. Getting some return was reasonable. That night, as Victoria nestled in my arms and whispered, "Someone bothered you today, didn't they?" I stammered, "No, nothing," but before I finished, I wanted to slap myself. Jack was her cousin. He must have known. When Isabella and her daughter entered, Victoria gently stroked my palm and said, "It's nothing, just two strangers." "I'm afraid you'd overthink." When assigned the system mission, it was clear I couldn't reveal anything about the system or mission, but in a marriage, deceit and secrecy are forbidden. So I tried many indirect ways to confess, only to find even the slightest mention, like saying I'd married, caused trouble. Victoria narrowed her eyes, looked at me coldly, and huffed, "Unrelated, are you sure, husband? I heard the child called you Dad." The adult husband then suddenly bit my shoulder, leaving small tooth marks. As a strong woman, she'd surely investigated but found nothing. What angered her was my subconscious secrecy about those two finding me and my past with them, something no one could uncover. Yet in my heart, that past was still a lingering wound. I wanted to speak but stopped. She gently placed a finger on my lips, shook her head, and without a word, pulled my hand to her waist, pressing close. Victoria was pinned beneath my body as emotions surged in the night. I tried to cook dish after dish. When the first morning light entered the bedroom, Victoria buried her head in my chest, rubbed gently, and whispered, "Husband, don't deceive me, okay? I don't know what I'd do otherwise." Victoria loved me deeply. The system clearly said her affection for me was only 70%, but after 5 years, the remaining 1% showed no progress. I didn't know the end. She could give me everything, even her life, but not her heart. The next morning, when I woke, Victoria was out. On the table was breakfast and a note. "Husband, I bit you last night. It was wrong, but you hit things too. Let's call it even. Tonight, you must cook for me as compensation. P.S. Dad, don't be angry with your child anymore." Here's a drawing of an orange cat begging for forgiveness, definitely by Lily. Thinking of my secret about the lipstick, I couldn't help but laugh. The discomfort from yesterday vanished. I put away the note and was about to call Victoria when my phone rang. A familiar male voice said, "Hello, is this Mr. Ethan? May I speak with you?" Strange yet familiar. I'd never met him directly, but I'd heard his voice in messages at the VIP room. Daniel, in a luxurious suit, stood as I arrived. He politely greeted me, "Mr. Ethan, right? I heard my wife and daughter found you yesterday. I sincerely apologize. I've been busy these years, neglecting them, causing their memories to falter. They often mistake others for their husband and father. I handle this a few times a year. It's our fault. On behalf of my wife and daughter, I apologize." He poured me tea. "Actually, don't laugh, but over the years, they've mistaken many people. I've had to deal with this annually. It's our mistake." We clinked teacups, the aroma of long jing before the rain seeping in. I knew why he wanted to meet today. When the system alerted that Isabella's memories had recovered, I guessed Daniel, the male lead of this world, would also be shaken. In his night dreams, he might often dream of his past filled with longing but failing, mistaking pearls for oak. And now his status, wealth, and assets all belonged to someone else. He was just a marriage breaker. Despite countless DNA tests, his wife and child insisted their husband and father were someone named Ethan. Time passed, and even she began to doubt if she'd ever had a husband named Ethan. I sipped tea and said, "No need to apologize. I had your wife and child thrown out of the community yesterday. If there's nothing else, I'll take my leave." "You're married?" Daniel seemed shocked but quickly composed himself. "When did you marry? Do you have children?" As he spoke, he feigned calmness, refilling my tea. "Actually, I just wanted to chat since I find you suitable." Seeing his embarrassment, I suddenly felt amused. I'd once been as foolish as him, suffering from my wife's betrayal and my daughter wanting another father, tormenting myself as they occasionally left secretly for a place unknown, as if they had another family. Life is cyclical. The Pure Land from 12 years ago has now become Daniel's burden. He looked at me with probing eyes. I said, "I married 5 years ago. My child is 5. Hearing this, he exhaled in relief and began reminiscing about Hannah, calling her his little comfort. He knew he drank socially and had stomach pain, so at a young age, she learned to cook stomach-soothing soup for him. I nodded indifferently, seeing him lost in warm memories of fatherly love. Just as we discussed our happiness and promised not to bother each other, the door burst open. Isabella let Hannah in, angrily questioning, "Daniel, why are you bothering him? She's still your daughter, the one you once proudly called your greatest daughter. But now you want to tear our family apart? You may not need us anymore. You're a hateful third party. It's all your fault." Daniel paled, losing his composure. He pushed Hannah away and said, "Enough. My mother, father, and even the housekeeper told you I'm your husband, the child's father. But you still don't believe it. Monthly DNA tests, and for a year and a half, you've gone out searching for Ethan. You don't trust us at all. Are we a family or not? Ethan has nothing to do with you." He frowned in pain, gripping his hands, the feeling of collapse I'd experienced years ago now clear on him. But I just found it funny. Still, I had to pretend confusion. I stepped forward, patted his shoulder, and said slowly, "Your wife goes out to find other men. Your daughter wants another father. What's most important to you now?" Before I finished, Isabella interrupted, "Everything you said is true. We're the real husband and wife." I was speechless. After all this, she still denied responsibility. Annoying, I feigned sympathy, patted Daniel's shoulder, then sharply slapped Isabella. I shouted, "Lying. I'd be blind to have been your husband. Even if your story were true, you're the adulteress acting righteous while cheating. Go get help for your delusions. Dragging your daughter to claim fathers is a strange hobby." Daniel stood there, tears streaming but silent. I left them in chaos. However, Isabella and her daughter didn't give up. They chased me to the villa entrance. Panting, Isabella said, "Ethan, you may not believe it, but everyone's memories in this world have been altered, including yours. 5 years ago, we were truly a family. You were my husband and Hannah's father." Hannah grabbed my arm, saying, "Dad, don't abandon Hannah. I'll be good." I clenched my fist, ready to scold them, when suddenly I heard a dog bark in Lily's soft voice, "Dad, do you have another child outside?" I looked up to see Victoria standing beside me, holding a cream cake with Lily and Buddy, the dog from our first meeting. I told Isabella the first was married and had my own family, but she didn't believe me. Now my family stood right before her. Isabella looked at me, her voice trembling. There, I stepped forward, my left hand hugging Victoria, my right holding Lily's, and said, "Let me introduce. This is my wife and child, and this is our dog." Hearing his name, Buddy barked twice, startling Hannah, who stepped back. In truth, Hannah once loved Buddy. When she was 6 months old, only this little dog with a bell could soothe her cries. At 3, when she was bullied by neighborhood kids, Buddy, despite being beaten, protected her. But at 4, she suddenly claimed to be allergic to dog fur. I couldn't believe someone could develop an allergy after 4 years with a dog. I insisted on taking her to the doctor, but Isabella stopped me, asking, "Is the child more important or the dog?" That question sealed Buddy's fate. Later, reviewing their chats, I realized it wasn't Hannah allergic but Daniel. They sent Buddy away because Daniel found dog hair on them. Dogs remember kindness, not grudges. Seeing Isabella and Hannah, Buddy still wagged his tail to greet me. I patted Buddy's head and said, "Fool." Isabella trembled, asking, "Is this really Buddy?" I nodded, thought for a moment, and said, "Yes, I brought him back. Buddy is the dog we adopted on our wedding day." Isabella even joked he was our eldest daughter, but under your bright moon, that eldest daughter was just a dog. At this, Isabella had to understand I brought back the dog, remembered the past, and didn't forget we were once a family. I just didn't need them anymore. A dog leaves those who dislike it and finds a new family, new kin. Isabella gave a bitter smile as if resigning to fate. Hannah walked on the green path, forcing a smile, trying to be polite. We truly mistook someone. Hannah opened her eyes wide to retort but was pulled away by Isabella. A month later, Isabella sent me a letter. In it, she said she transferred all her assets to me, that I deserved them. Daniel couldn't distinguish past from present and now lived in a nursing home. Hannah cut ties with him, dropped out, and left home. In the letter's end, she wished me happiness in the remaining years, saying her belated agreement was compensation, like how I'd once tolerated them. She wished me a fulfilling life with my love by my side. Holding the letter, I sat silently on the rooftop for a long time. Far away were the bright lights of thousands of homes, the moon hanging high, and the characteristic hustle of this world. I've been here 12 years. Have my parents aged 12 more years? A cold wind passed. I turned and saw Victoria playfully blowing into my neck. she asked, thinking about something. I sighed, trying to speak but failing. She smiled softly. If you can't say it, don't force it. Let me tell you, I wasn't angry that day. Maybe a little, but just comfort me and I'll be fine. She always acted this way, so understanding. I felt I owed her much. She never got angry or made a fuss, even when we argued. The biggest thing she needed was my comfort, because she said in marriage, no one should always concede to the other. Love isn't a battle, there should be no losers. I hugged her and said, "Wife, I'm sorry. It's just the past." Victoria smirked. I know you're not from this world. I know you married and had a child with someone else. I also know the system won't let you say it. I've always known everything. She hugged me tightly and said, if that's what's bothering you, I don't care. If you missed that child, you can bring them to live with us. Everyone has a past. I just need your present and future. But husband, will I truly be in your future? I froze, looked up at her. In her bright eyes was a starry sky and deep love. She continued, I know when the conquest reaches 100%, you'll leave. I married you because I couldn't stay. We all have our own lives. I think even if you leave later, I won't regret it, as long as you're happy, as long as you want, as long as I can. Victoria gently stroked my palm, choked, I don't want you to go. Like this morning, seeing your peaceful sleeping face and Lily, suddenly I didn't want you to leave. My life before was just a part of a story others wrote. It was only when I met you that I had a real family. Suddenly the system chimed, conquest successful 100%. Does the host wish to leave this world? Victoria's tears welled. She said softly, go husband. 5 years are enough. A week later I was shopping with 2 elderly people at a modern mall in the 21st century. Since the mission was complete, the system rewarded me with many material prizes. I placed my parents in the best nursing home and bought the safest retirement insurance. The system suddenly blared, danger. Danger? The shield is breached. The host's wife and daughter have broken through and found you. I turned to see Victoria carrying a lobster bag, Lily holding a packed bag, and Buddy biting my coat. Victoria angrily said, I told you to leave. Did you really leave for good? If we didn't find you, you wouldn't come back, would you? I ran over, hugged them tightly, and said, how could I? Actually, the system compensated me, allowing me to go to any other world. I'll settle my parents, then come for you. Lily, pouting, pointed at my parents and said, call Grandma and Grandpa. Lily sweetly called Grandpa. Grandma? My parents beamed and responded, oh, good child. Victoria meeting my parents for the first time was a bit awkward, while Buddy's eyes shone, wagging his tail nonstop. In this world, I have a complete family.